there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. One man, one microphone, one mission, one message. True News, the only newscast reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And now for the most powerful hour on radio, here is end-time newsman, Rick Wiles.
This is True News, 1 hour of uncensored news, views, and commentary. Welcome to the program. I'm Rick Wiles. Today's Thursday, July 10, 2014. Retired U.S. Army Ranger Command Sergeant Major Dan Page will be my guest today, and he has a sobering message to deliver regarding the globalist plans underway to collapse the United States of America and fold it into a global fascist regime. He retired from the U.S. Army in 2012 because he just couldn't go along with what Mr. Obama was doing to the U.S. Army. He'll be here in about 10 minutes. Before I start the newscast, I want to say this to those of you listening to me who know how to tell time spiritually. The hour is late. Plans that we have known about for many years are now in play in real time. And these are perilous times, so be sober, be alert, be on guard. Get into your assigned place as God has already spoken to you. As for me, I am in my assigned place. Since the first broadcast in 1999, our mission has always been to call people to repentance, to expose the plan to eliminate national borders and sovereignty, to create a world government, to inform the body of Christ that a global regime will rise up and take control of much of the world. And our mission has been to strengthen, inspire, and nourish the saints of God to endure to the end. When our Lord Jesus Christ comes to rule and reign, we have no other agenda. We depend entirely upon our Heavenly Father to meet our needs, to operate this international radio ministry. And there may be a day in the future when it is no longer possible for True News to continue to operate. If and when that day arrives, I will remain faithful to the divine calling upon my life to report the truth and to minister to the saints of God. In the meantime, we will carry on. And we sincerely appreciate the saints of God around the world who financially support True News. Now, all of us can feel the economy tightening and contracting around us. If you look around, shopping malls are devoid of shoppers. The parking lots are empty. A lot of empty storefronts. Meanwhile, prices, especially food and energy prices, are climbing. Now, True News has always operated on a lean budget. We don't splurge on anything. We're very frugal. And at this midpoint of 2014, I can tell you that True News needs a lot more daily listeners who will help shoulder the financial burden of paying for this ministry's expenses. We have a very small, loyal group of supporters who carry all the weight. But they need some relief because they've been carrying the load for a long, long time. And we need more of you to step up and help them. The size of your gift is not the most important thing. It is the consistency that really counts. We need more people whom we know will always be there month after month to support True News. Now, my dream for 15 years has always been to see a day when every True News listener donates something in the same week. That would be awesome. That would absolutely be awesome. Listen, our expenses don't hold back. They keep coming in month after month. and we have to pay those bills. And so he keeps me on my knees, praying, seeking the Lord, trusting the Lord that he will provide. And he has always provided. But I can tell you that I believe it's becoming a burden for many of our listeners to give the very large, generous donations. And that's why we need more people who will step up with donations and help us. Could this be the week that we see everybody do something in 1 week? Well, tens of thousands of people listen to this program every day. We don't know what the number is. Most likely it is in the hundreds of thousands. And we've had tens of thousands of people download the app in the past 5 weeks. But we would be greatly encouraged if every single person would do something this week to say, I'm going to show my appreciation for True News. I'm going to do something, and I'm going to get a donation to True News. It would be very encouraging to us. Now, you can donate online at TrueNews.com. If you have the app, there's an icon. Click on Donate. And if you're listening on AM, FM, or shortwave radio, you can send a check or money order to Post Office Box 690069 in Vero Beach, Florida. The zip code is 32969. Thank you very, very much. Well, days ago, we saw the shocking photos of ISIS jihadists using sledgehammers to break up and destroy ancient biblical artifacts in Iraq, such as the tomb of the prophet Jonah. Today, we're told by the news media that ISIS seized 88 pounds of uranium from a scientific research lab at a university in Mosul. And it's easy to see where this storyline is taking us. A dirty bomb will explode in New York City or Washington, D.C., or London or Paris or some other Western city. When I read about the uranium last night, my first thought was the vision seen by the late Chuck Colson in December 2005, in which he saw terrorists explode a dirty bomb in Washington. In the vision, it happened after terrorists captured control of the Middle Eastern oil fields. If you recall, when John Shorey was here a month ago, he talked about the late Pastor David Wilkerson's 1984 book, Set the Trumpet to Thy Mouth. He recounted David Wilkerson's famous vision in which he saw American cities on fire. But he said it would happen after the Middle East oil fields are set ablaze. Now, John interpreted that to mean that it was a reference to the Gulf War when Saddam Hussein set Kuwait's oil wells on fire. But I got to tell you, I politely disagree with John. I think he's missing what the Lord was telling him. I believe the Holy Spirit is alerting us to watch now for the oil fields to be set ablaze. And when you combine David Wilkerson's vision with Chuck Colson's vision, you see a bigger picture. Chuck Colson saw terrorists seize control of the Middle East and shut off the flow of oil to Europe and America. When the oil flow is shut down is when the dirty bomb exploded in Washington, according to the vision he saw in 2005. Today, we're told that ISIS captured 88 pounds of uranium. So, as far as I'm concerned, the storyline is in motion. That's why I say be alert, be on guard, be prepared. If you're wondering how much time we have remaining to be prepared for these types of events, my best estimate, and that's all it is, it's my estimate, is 12 months or less. That's the best case scenario. We're no longer talking in terms of years. We're now talking in terms of months. So act accordingly. Russia today reported that more than 340 gallons of water leaked from the cooling system intended to stabilize the temperature of the spent fuel at reactor number 5 at Fukushima. The system was offline, but loaded with fuel rods when the plant was damaged by the earthquake in 2011. Now, according to RT, that accident caused 3 of the plant's 6 nuclear reactors to melt down. But this is what's troubling. What they're saying now is the source of the leak was apparently a 3-millimeter diameter hole near a flow valve. And when the cooling system was turned off at around noon last Sunday, the temperature in the pool that holds the rods was about 73 degrees Fahrenheit, but started increasing by the hour. And according to RT, if no new cold water is pumped in at this rate, the Fukushima reactor will reach a dangerous threshold of 149 degrees in roughly 1 week. And we're coming up on that real fast. I need to take a break. You're listening to True News. When I come back, retired U.S. Army Sergeant Major Page is going to be here, Dan Page, and he's got some things to tell us about what he believes is in motion right now to be implemented in the United States of America. He believes that a takedown is underway of this country, and the globalists are putting into place a global regime. You want to hear this man when I come back after this break. You're listening to True News.
Reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ, you're listening to True News, the end-time newscast.
For over 16 years, listener-supported True News has been the champion of news and content not heard in the mainline media. True News has expanded its message to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week on 2 international shortwave stations.
That's almost 9,000 hours of programming a year.
We now produce or broadcast
Revelation Ready,
End Times Outpost,
True News,
Strength for the Journey,
Preparing for the End Time,
Real Science Radio,
Homecoming Radio.
More amazing content is coming. We reach out through radio,
YouTube,
Blog Talk,
Shortwave,
and our new smartphone app with over 22,000 downloads. True News is spreading the message of the second coming of Jesus Christ because of your faithful support to this vital message. A message like no other. But we can only go so far with the resources we have. Keep the message growing and strong.
Support True News.
Go to TrueNews.com to see how you can keep spreading this critical message. That's TruNews.com.
This is True News, the end-time newscast. I'm Rick Wiles. I've been in this seat behind the microphone for over 15 years. I have read, studied, and analyzed a lot of information and commentary and reports published around the world. I have interviewed many guests, including billionaires, retired U.S. generals, retired spies, members of the U.S. Congress, members of the Parliament of Great Britain and the European Union, economists, scientists, and so forth. Furthermore, I have interviewed or talked privately with pastors, evangelists, and men and women just like you who have experienced prophetic dreams and visions about horrifying things that would happen in the United States in the future. If you have a keen sense of history and an acute awareness of present-day events and trends, you will inevitably conclude that the United States of America has been targeted for a controlled takedown and that we are in the final stages of this operation. The spiritual atmosphere over America in mid-2014 is downright spooky. A fascist totalitarian regime is quickly congealing before our eyes. Sadly, the vast majority of Americans are sleepwalking through the destruction of their own nation. Their house is on fire, but they are sitting in their living rooms watching TV or on Facebook. As signs have intensified over the past 2 years that a revolution is underway, I have often asked on this radio program whether there are any U.S. military officers willing to come forward on this program to tell us precisely what is happening. Well, I finally found one who isn't afraid to tell the truth. Mr. Dan Page is a retired command sergeant major for the U.S. military command in Africa, As a Army Ranger, he was in charge of U.S. Army Special Forces in Africa until his retirement in 2012. In the U.S. Army, the position of Command Sergeant Major is the senior enlisted advisor to the commanding officer. Sergeant Major Page is fearlessly speaking out to citizens groups about the sinister plan that is underway now to merge America into a global regime. This is my first opportunity to speak with him. Sergeant Major Page, welcome to True News.
It's good to be here, sir. It's a privilege and an honor to be on your program. It's probably one of the last vestiges of honesty in the news media today. So it's truly, I am humbled to be speaking to you, and I do mean that sincerely.
Well, thank you very much. Let's start with a brief summary of your military career, in particular your involvement with the U.S. Military Command in Africa.
Well, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version because it expands just right at 38 years. I got drafted in 1969. And then, unbeknownst to me, I was not well educated. I had left school in the 6th grade. And the long story short, I volunteered for airborne school. I was drafted, and I was in an infantry unit. And I went to Fort Benning, became a paratrooper, then Ranger School, and I went to Vietnam. Then I went to Germany, then I came back, and I went again. And I got into Special Forces Warfare Command, Special Forces. And my specialty within that was psychological warfare. That's a very broad term for asymmetric warfare, which is how to destroy a nation from within without direct military contact. I did 2 years at West Point as an active duty drill instructor, and I served 10 years on the trail as a drill instructor up until the time I retired. My last combat tour was in Djibouti, Northeast Africa, at Camp Lamine. And I spent 18 months there, and we ran operations out of there all over the Middle East from there. And I got disgusted with it for things that were changing, and I come back, and that's where I retired.
I went to the website of AFRICOM. I noticed it is headquartered in Germany. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
All right. And I also noticed on the website it said that the purpose, the mission of AFRICOM is to eliminate violent extremists.
Well, therein lies the determination as to what do you call a terrorist. You have Al-Shabaab in there. You have Hezbollah, Hamas, Al-Qaeda, Taliban. You have everybody in there recruiting the African population to join their cause against the common global socialism, because they are vehemently independent and sovereign of their countries, and they don't want to be brought in to the type of economic situation that we are experiencing today.
What was there any particular single thing that prompted you to retire in 2012?
Yes, it was. The Secretary of the Army came over there on a visit, and his sole purpose was to garner our feelings on homosexuality into the military, and then would we be able to serve in a new form of military that he did not define, that I later worked out on my own, that the new service was going to be far different than what it is now, and I had no phantom of the depth of what that man was talking about. And upon learning what it was, how the U.S. military was going to be turned into more of a domestic police force, I said that was it for me, and I drew the line there.
And wait a minute, this was what was the position? Was this the Secretary of the Army?
Yes. Mm-hmm. At that time, correct. His primary his whole meeting that we went on there with was discussing that the rules are going to change to allow active homosexuality to be into the military, and I just could not go with that. And then he briefly touched upon a plan that the Army was going to be redirected into more low-intensity conflict, and that may very well involve domestic terrorism within the U.S., and I knew exactly where he was going with this conversation.
Were there any other officers who were alarmed?
Not really, because the secretary at that time chose to meet with the enlisted, and he wanted to get their feedback on how they felt about the policy changes that were coming. Women coming into military and serving in combat roles. And I think he walked away not happy with the answers that he was getting from the young soldiers over there. But that was his primary concern, that the new army was going to be coming in the next 3 or 4 years.
So it was going to be gay-oriented, and its mission was going to be more like a domestic police force.
Well, not directly per se into that, but what they wanted to do, the way I understood him, it's going to be involved more with low intensity conflict, and what that is it's not all out war with tanks and guns and bullets. You're going to be doing more spying. You're going to be more interacting to find out who is resistant to federal policies and federal ways of doing business. That seemed to me what he was indicating that we were going to be doing. We would be what became now is, as you well know, NSA is listening to everything that you and I talk about right now. And I came to learn that that's what he was talking about at that time, that the military was going to be very heavily involved in containing domestic terrorism, not overtly, but covertly.
Yet you were part of AFRICOM. I mean, it would seem to me that your mission was to go after terrorists in Africa.
Well, again, it goes back to what I've said to you. If you follow DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security's definition of a terrorist, and now this is their definition. This is not mine. It is a Caucasian male, 18 to 65, one who supports the Second Amendment, one who believes in the second coming of Jesus Christ, one that is against illegal immigration and is against homosexuality and has a definition of a traditional marriage. That is their definition of a terrorist. So that's why I keep saying to you, depends on your definition of terrorism.
It has appeared for the last several years that the Obaministas are purging the U.S. military of the patriots. Is that the case?
Yes, that's absolutely true. As a matter of fact, they just over the last few months, they have several flag officers. A flag officer is a 4-star general or above. You've had a General Greg, student servant of the Marine Corps, removed. You've had General Charles M. Aganganis of the Marine Corps booted out. You've had Lieutenant General David Holmes Hooton of the Army, Vice Admiral Tim Guyana of the Navy. You've had Major General Michael Gray of the Air Force. These men were removed of service because of their refusal to support military involvement in domestic affairs. That's the reason they were booted out.
Why haven't any of those men spoken out?
Well, generals are not like enlisted. There's a big difference between officers and enlisted. NCOs like me, especially Command Sergeant Major, we don't care whose feelings we hurt. We just throw it out there. Officers, they have a different code that they go by, and they got a much larger pension. My pension is not even a third of what their pension is. So you'd have to talk to them about that. That I can't speak for. Okay.
All right. Now, Mr. Page, a number of our guests in the past 2 or 3 years, and I'm talking both secular guests and religious, ecclesiastical guests from various fields of expertise, have indicated that they believe something significant is going to happen in September 2015. Do you have any inclination or any information that says something is in the works for next year, 2015?
I can tell you what I know. I can tell you what I have been set in on briefings, where I was not the principal person doing the briefing, but I've heard talk from very, very high sources that there is a timeline. Starting in 2015, you're going to start to see, let me back up. there are people that you've been talking to that don't believe what you say, but starting in 2015, they are going to start believing what you say. You have to be very watchful of created, orchestrated events within the United States that would cause what we call the 97 percenters of the people to demand action against the 3 percenters who's going to get the blame. So there's going to be action taken, I suspect, within the continental United States and abroad that's going to create such havoc worldwide that people are going to demand some form of protection from the federal government. That's what I suspect is coming. And this thing on our border right now with the illegals, I think might be part of that.
Do you believe that this surge of illegal children, or I should say illegal immigrant children, coming across the border is a genuine humanitarian crisis, or is this a manufactured, orchestrated invasion?
In my opinion, this is an orchestrated event by the Obama administration to bring down the United States economically and socially and culturally. And the reason I tell you that is this. The Russians have signed an agreement with the Nicaraguans to build a new canal through there. There is no way in heaven's name that a 4, 5, 10-year-old can walk all the way from Honduras, because I've been to Honduras, all the way up through Mexico and then into the United States. Somebody has to be bringing them up here. Now, I would like to remind your listeners that there was such a thing as the bubonic plague started in Asia and it went into Europe and killed over 45 million people, if I remember correctly. And then you had the Spanish flu of 1918, where numerous people were killed. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is there's also Iranians building secret military bases down there. Now, this is not my opinion. There are Iranians very heavily in South America, and they are, in fact, building military bases down there. And my point is, I don't think that the average American can tell an Egyptian from a Brazilian or an Iranian from a Mexican. It is extremely dangerous down there, and I really suspect, in my opinion, that there may be some type of clandestine operation be a plan to bring us down.
I agree. And just, today, there was reports about an Islamic prayer mat found in the Arizona desert. Well,
right.
Anybody with common sense knows that, the whole world knows today that the border is down and anybody can come across. And the U.S. government is literally facilitating it, helping, paying our agents to bring the people across and exactly. Harassing and intimidating and threatening to arrest American citizens who try to stop it.
Well, it's not. It's only that they are literally taking Border Patrol agents off the border so they can make it more lawless down there. And again, I want to go back to the fact that Iran has had these troops down there that we know of for 5 years. They've been training with the Brazilian military, and that tour ended this past May. So if you take an Iranian down there, I don't think anybody's going to notice the difference from a Mexican from an Iranian. Now, if you talk to people within Homeland Security privately, they will tell you there's a real threat there. And if you remember, back in I think the late 80s, when the former Soviet Union collapsed, there has been alleged that there's up to 80 suitcase or backpack-type nuclear bombs missing. And yet our southern border remains totally unprotected. If we can protect everybody else in the world, and I did 4 tours in Iran, in Afghanistan and Iraq. If we can send billions of dollars in troops over there, why can't we protect our border? Doesn't make sense.
15 years ago, I met privately for 2 days with former GRU military spy Stanislav Lunov, colonel in the GRU, and his chief assignment in the 80s and 90s was to find places in America to hide nuclear suitcase bombs. And I asked Colonel Lunov, how did you bring the suitcase nukes into the United States? And he said, we used illegal immigrants to walk them across the border.
Correct.
So if they were doing that 20 years ago, what do you think they're doing today?
Well, Homeland Security will tell you that they have what they call OTMs. That's other than Mexicans. This illegal children, by the way, this is the first wave that actually has been outed into the news media. But they've been having 10,000 per week since the first of the year hitting that border. In these briefings I've seen, I want to go back to 2015, there is a timeline that I have seen. In 2015, you're going to start to see economic woes, international crisis, and blah, 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 blah. The U.S., as I understand it, is to merge into a North American Union no later than 2017, 2020 at the latest. So our national sovereignty is under direct attack here because Mexicans can hold triple citizenship. They can hold a citizenship in Mexico and vote while they're American citizens and vote up here, and then they'll become state citizens.
Are you saying Are you saying they're going to revive this North American Union concept again?
Well, of course they are. Yes, they are. That's never going to go away. As a matter of fact, and again, this is a lot of times just senior commanders and soldiers talking. There's something called CAFTA and then AFTA. Have you heard of those two things?
No, I haven't.
AFTA stands for Central American Free Trade Agreement. AFTA means the Americas. So what you have now is Canada, America, and Mexico involved in NAFTA. With CAFTA, it's going to go all the way down to Panama, and then the final leg will be all the way down to Brazil. We will be under one social form of government and one economic system.
Now,
that's what's about to happen.
George W. Bush tried to do that, and it got stopped. But you're saying it's still underway. They're still negotiating. They're still putting this thing together.
Well, of course they are. Yes, they are. No, it's not going away. It's talked about at very high levels. You know, the American news media has done a marvelous job of demonizing Caucasian Christians. They have literally demonize them to the point that if you talk like this, you're accused of being a sexist, a racist, or something like that. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. They don't want the truth to be heard out here, and we're coming to a point in America where people are going to have to make some decisions. And you mentioned this in your opening statement. They're either going to have to get into the game and quit playing child's game with sports and things like that, and they're going to start having to hold the American politicians' feet to the fire, or else we're going to lose our country by 2017.
All right. Now, I woke up this morning, and the first thing on my mind as I was getting dressed was Dr. Daniel Daves, who lives in Costa Rica. He's originally from Texas. He moved to Costa Rica, but here's the reason he moved to Costa Rica was several years ago. He had a prophetic dream in which he and his son were standing in downtown Dallas, Texas, near Dealey Plaza, and there was a vast crowd of people in the streets. They were looking up at the skyscrapers. Suddenly, the skyscrapers had video screens, and a government official appeared on all of the skyscrapers, and this man made an announcement. He said, number one, the United States of America has ceased to exist. Number two, all property lines have been erased. Number three, the dollar is dead. Now, that dream,
what he's talking.
Well, that dream shook him up so much, he got his family out of the country. Now, I woke up this morning, sir, with that on my mind, and I've not talked to Daniel Daves for probably since last year. And then, in preparing for this interview, I was watching a video of you speaking, and you almost said the exact same things about what's going to happen starting in 2015.
Well, let me go back to that, and then I'm going to talk to you about a road the Chinese have built. But I want to go back to what you just said about the sky. Psychological Operations has new equipment that has just come out in the last couple of years, and they are capable of projecting an image into the sky that will entirely fill the sky with any image that they so want. Secondly, We have new computer chips into psychological warfare sound systems. It cannot control your thinking, but they can disrupt your brain activities, and you can become very nausea and things of that sort. So we are one step away from we can throw the image into the sky now to appear whatever we want. If you're a Buddhist, you can see Buddha. If you're a Catholic, you can see Mary if you so desire. If you are an evangelical, you can see Jesus. So those things are possible right now. What is not known is that with the new sound equipment that psychological warfare units had, which I commanded, they're able to start scrambling your brain, and they're one step away from being able to send you a thought. Now, that's just very, very close. Now I want to go back to a road that's been built from China, from the southern part of China. I think this is maybe what you're talking about. It is a highway that's been built by the U.S. If I don't have the emphatic amount of money that it cost the American taxpayer, but I believe it's $4 billion to build that because of what we owe China. It starts at the southern end of China, goes down through Pakistan and India, and comes back up through Kazakhstan into Turkey, and it ends at the mouth of the Euphrates River. Now, they do use a lot of existing highways. It's called the Old Crockamora Highway. So if you Google that, it will pop up the Old Crockamora Highway or the Old Silk Highway that used to run back in biblical times. Now, that highway has been rebuilt with U.S. money. That highway has 2 foot of concrete with 3 foot of asphalt on top of it. It is for military and commercial use only. Now, if you stop and think about this, why would you need such a very, very heavy road like that? That has to accommodate some fairly heavy equipment. But that road, if you study eschatology, you know what it's going to be. In my opinion, that's where the king of the east is going to come from, into the middle of east.
It's an interesting concept. Getting back to the U.S. Is the world going to be divided up into 10 regions?
Yes, it is. There are 2 models on this. I don't have it right here in front of me, and I'm going to go from memory, but the world has been broken down right now into 10 regions. And there's 2 models. I'll give you the first one. The region 1 is the United States. Region 2, I'm going to go from memory now, is Japan, and it goes down through Australia. You got the European Union, the Asia, and some other countries. That's model number 1. The second model that they're toying with is to create 10 unions based upon the European Union. So with us in America, it would be the North American Union. That's region number 1. Then you have the European Union. Then you have the New Zealand-Australia Union, the Japan-Korea Union, the Asian unit, and so forth. So that's the 2 models that they're toying with right now. But they have to crash the economies in each of those countries and globally to bring this about.
Who's going to make the final decision about which model is implemented?
That I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. This is just my thought on this and some other people that I know in different positions. The U.S. wants to use the UN to make the world in our image, and the UN wants to use us to make the world in their image. My feeling is this. There are 5 or 6 countries mentioned in the Bible that never lose their sovereignty. You don't hear about anybody else. So I think that we're going to lose. That's just my thought. I think the U.S. is going to lose in this. I think that the European Union is going to dominate this.
When you were in the military, did you ever see or hear talk of such a plan?
Oh yes. It's openly talked about. Well, let me say, it's privately talked about. It's not talked about in front of junior enlisted. It's talked about with commanders and their senior NCOs or flag officers. This is well known. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not something out of the blue to them. Mm-hmm. But they're not going to talk about it because they've got career story about. And even now, I'm retired. I can be called back active duty whenever I want, and held accountable for this. But you have to You have to speak the truth because you are going to face your Savior one day, and I'd much rather please Him than man. So that's what I'm looking at right now.
That's right. When do you believe that they're going to attempt to begin implementing this regional plan?
Well, for me and people in my position and my background, I can see it already. It started a long time ago. It started when we entered Bosnia. I was the long story of that. I was in Tuzla, up at M&D North in Bosnia, and we had a general. I'm not going to name his name, but he said that he told us that this is the beginning of the New World Army at that time. Because we had what we call Salute Alley. And every coalition force member that was involved in that had their flag up, and we were required to salute every one of them. And we wore different unit patches from different armies. And he said this was the beginning, and this was in '95, then again in '99. This is the beginning of the New World Army, he said. Now, this was a U.S. commander of a division over there. So that's where this thing actually started.
Obviously, it's been underway for quite some time, but are we going to see it on the surface level? Is this going to become much more visible in the coming 1 to 2 years?
Well, here's what you're going to see. If the military starts, the only way you'll see the military get involved is if local law enforcement cannot control the populace. Then what will happen is the military will come in, but they will stay in the shadows. Typically what we do when we come into a country that has a type of government that we have or similar to that, they will disarm the policemen. They will leave a weapon in their holster, but they will take the firing pin out and the magazine remains empty. So they'll have the presence of the police, but they'll be the real authority behind it. The second thing will happen is all communications will be shut down. And the military will bring in a new broadcaster, such as your voice will not be heard. You will be silenced. I don't know if you've ever heard of this or not. Have you ever heard the term continuity of government?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Oliver North and Dick Cheney.
Right. Okay. Have you looked at an exchange between him and and Congressman Jack Brooks where they talk about the term continuity of government?
Oh yeah, that was during the Iran-Contra controversy, wasn't
exactly.
it? Yes, sir, I saw it.
Okay, well, subsequent to that, under the Bush administration, they took that a step further and developed what they call a plan called Main Core. That's two different words: MAINCORE. And in the event of civil disturbance against the federal government policy, they are going to inter indefinitely X number of millions of Americans, and that's why this 2012 National Defense Authorization Act that we got was so very important. And the Supreme Court just upheld, about 2 weeks ago, they upheld the president authorizing assassination of American citizens and indefinite detentions. So you can be arrested without ever being charged, and when they come in and get you, you're gone forever. So I think that's what's about to happen.
Well, I think that's what many of us who have been speaking out for years are concerned, that we're at this stage. Dinesh D'Souza, the filmmaker who produced 2016 and his new movie, America, Imagine a World Without Her. I think the most chilling scene in the movie is at the end when he's in handcuffs. And, Mr. Page, I don't know. There were a lot of people. When I went to see the movie on the 4th of July, there were a lot of people there, who applauded at the end of the movie. But I wanted to stand up in the theater and say, do y'all understand that man is going to prison? Do you get it? He made a movie 2 years ago about Obama, and now, 2 years later, he's on his way to prison.
Right. The Army just built a new training center in Virginia. Perhaps you've heard of this.
Yes.
Now, we've always had training centers around the world, but we have never built a city to scale that resembled a U.S. city. We've always had them built to an African village or a Middle Eastern city or something like that. But the one in Virginia, and that came out, that was made public, I think, back in February or March. That's for a reason. Soldiers in the military, and remember, I used to be a drill instructor, a first sergeant and all that, they are being told that if you want to stay, now I have not confirmed this. I just got this yesterday. I have not confirmed this. That officers now who serve at the discretion of Congress, if they want to go beyond their initial 6 years, they've got to sign a waiver saying they're willing to shoot American citizens if the president so orders that. So this is the kind of thing that they're going into. They now used to have target training on the rifle range where they had just the shape of a human form. Now they're actually starting to put faces on those things, and they are not Arabs, they are not Muslims, but they are Americans. So that's a whole switch in training doctrine.
And that training city in Virginia, I think, is it at Quantico? That training city has a church. It looks like a Baptist church or a Methodist church.
Right. There is an air of extreme hatred toward Christians within the military. You cannot close prayers in the name of Jesus. You can make a generic prayer as long as no one finds it offensive, but you can't use the word Jesus. You can't. In many places, you can't even have a Bible sitting out now. Now that's persecution.
This surge of illegal immigrant children coming into America, the children are being taken by federal agents to U.S. military bases where the children are being detained and held at military bases. I suspect this is a psychological effort to prepare the American people for the roundup and detainment of their children in military bases.
Well, I would think that's true. See, one of the things that we do in psychological warfare, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine. When I was born, they have to put down who your mother, father is, race, and sex, stuff like that. And they put down a Caucasian male on my birth certificate. Well, the other day I went down to get a new one, and they had white male. And I asked the lady, I said, well, why is this on here? I said, this is wrong. She says, oh, no, it's all the same. She says, it's all the same. I said, well, then if it's the same, why did they change it? Well, the point I'm trying to make to you is I did 2 years in Germany at the University of Heidelberg studying psychological warfare and how to get people to go along with a program and make it easy for soldiers to kill if they needed to kill them, such as in World War II. Well, the first thing they have to do is to take your humanity away. And the first thing they do is they redefine you as your race. So I was born a Caucasian male, but I have evolved into a white male. So that tells you how they're doing this. They're programming the American people for dependency. If they can get you dependent, then everything else will fall into place, because people, when they get hungry, will do anything they can to eat. So these kids coming up here are nothing more than a ploy. And bear in mind, if they're willing to misuse those poor children, think of what they're willing to do to me or you. If they're willing to kill them by letting them loose in the desert, what are they willing to do to us?
Mr. Page, I've got about 10 minutes remaining, and you're on record as saying that there are thousands of Russian Spetsnaz commandos inside the USA right now.
Well, that statement has really, really escalated into something that it shouldn't. But let me tell you what's been going on here. The U.S. is and that was my fault to some degree. There is and there isn't. The U.S. is a very large training center for years. We have been training everybody since time began. And at any one given time, you will find thousands, literally thousands of different soldiers in America. They're all here at one time. Coalition forces, they're all over the place at any one given time. Coming into Fort Leonard Wood, if you go down there in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, there is a full-time, or there was prior to my retirement, let's say, there's a full-time Australian there, Russian, and a German officer that serves at the Engineer Center. That's not unusual to be all over the place. Now, when I was aware of them coming in like that was back then. I do know that there was a large contingency of them out at the Denver airport. Large contingency, and they even set up games out there to see if they could storm the Denver airport. So that's what I meant by that statement on there. So
well, I mean, we know for a fact that there was a group of Russian Spetsnaz at Fort Carson, Colorado.
Right.
Was 2 years ago.
Right.
Which was
that's what I was.
Yeah, it was a shocking revelation. Why would we invite Russian commandos to train alongside American commandos? Why would we show them our training and our techniques and how we operate? What's the purpose of it?
Well, the very simple, it started in Bosnia. I want to go back to that when we started augmenting the same radios, the same style radios, the same training procedures. But the reason they're doing that is, you remember Boris Yeltsin when they had the alleged coup just before the Soviet Union collapsed. Do you remember what happened when Yeltsin stood on the tank out in front of the Kremlin? I
remember him standing. What happened?
Okay, the Russian soldier refused to shoot on their own people. So that's why they're bringing in. There are large amounts of Russian soldiers in this country. I'm not backing down on that. What I'm saying is that they come in and go. It's very fluid. Okay, you never know how many is here, but there are thousands of foreign soldiers in this country, including Russians, and they will shoot American citizens because they're not going to hesitate to do it.
I've always suspected that if we have large-scale civil unrest in this country, or if there is an uprising where the American people try to dislodge a criminal regime from its death grip on the constitutional republic, that NATO troops would be invited in to help the military put down what they're calling insurgents.
Of course. As a matter of fact, you had let me touch on something real quick here, because time is short. About 2 months ago or less, a Mexican helicopter invaded American space and shot on American Border Patrol agents. We know that there has been Russian soldiers on our northern border in Canada at a full time, and the Canadian police have even made excursions into our borders, and they're going undone. We have NATO aircraft flying over America during the immediate time after 9/11 occurred. So that's not unusual.
That's right.
You're right, and I agree with you. In my opinion, sometime between now and 2017, there's going to be a bloodbath in this country. I believe it has started. In my opinion, I can see it, but the rest of the country is going to see it soon.
Do you believe that it's going to be a spontaneous uprising, or is it going to be what you mentioned in the beginning, a created, orchestrated events to create havoc?
It could be a combination of both. When we went into Afghanistan and these other countries, we usually go in very light clothes, civilian clothes sometimes, and we create a problem so that the people will want us there. I suspect it's going to have a three-pronged attack. I suspect the economy is going to get very bad, and those people that rely on some kind of state assistance are going to be in big trouble. Secondly, there's going to be a created or orchestrated international event to draw your attention away. And then there'll be a big event or a series of small events within the U.S., and that's when it will happen, because it's what we call the 97 percenters. 97% of the American people are going to go along to get along, 3% are not. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Well, today's news out of the Middle East, that ISIS seized 80-some pounds of uranium. You can see where this is going.
Right.
6 months, a year from now, there'll be a dirty bomb that explodes in a major Western city.
Well, this I know. I can tell you who's going to get the blame on this, because, I've had this discussion with very serious people within the military. It's going to be Caucasian male Christians who are going to get the blame for this. If you talk to any police officer, when he goes to training, there are three groups identified as terrorists. First is the sovereign citizens movement. Secondly is the Aryan Nation, and a third are Christian males. They never talk about other people as terrorists. They don't talk about the Black Panthers. So the people are being programmed to believe the fact that Christian males are the terrorists. So they're the ones who's going to be blamed for this.
Final question: can this be stopped?
honest with you, it can, but it's not going to be. But it can be, yes.
Why do you believe it won't be?
Because of the 97 percenters. Let me give you an example of what I'm saying. This last Super Bowl, the average ticket prior to that game was $240 a ticket. According to Visa and MasterCard, there were there was a large percentage of people went bankrupt on their credit card because they went to see the Super Bowl. We have misplaced priorities, sir. We are focused on the here and now rather than the hereafter. And as long as grown men are more active in watching sports than getting politically involved, this is not going to change. A real quick story. I was getting my hair cut this morning, sitting in the barber shop. Two men were in there. All they could talk about was sports. So the barber asked them about the kids on the border, and they had no idea what this man was talking about because all they wanted to do was talk sports. So that reason it's not going to change until grown men man up and be men.
And my fear is fear will overtake them at that point.
Right.
And
I can tell you, if you are not afraid, then something's wrong. God give us the spirit of fear to say, slow down, think about what you're doing. Okay? There's no such thing as not fear in battle. I've been so afraid because I've had 6 combat tours in my entire career, and each time I've been terrified. But you have to put that aside, and you have to make some decisions because God put the man in charge of his household to do 2 things, provide and protect his family. And the males in this country are not doing that. They've abrogated that to the police department and to somebody else to take care of them. And it really grieves me to say that, no, it cannot be stopped. But it could be. If we could get the men mobilized to get politically active and hold the local officials and state officials responsible, we could change this. But I would give you some suggestions on this. Focus your political attention at the county and the state level, such as the sheriff's office and things like that. Do not give any support to any federal career politician. Do not donate to the Republican faction or the Democratic faction of the Socialist Party that we got in charge. Do not contribute anything to them. Stay at the state and local level. Then I think we have a chance.
All right. Well, the bottom line is Jesus Christ is our only hope.
Correct. I agree with that.
And unless this nation turns to Jesus Christ, nothing we do is going to work. My guest today is retired Command Sergeant Major Dan Page. Sir, appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you, sir.
All right, everybody. If you live in the Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Spokane, Washington region, I'm going to be there for a private meeting at the end of the month. But on Saturday morning, July 26th, I'd like to get together with all the True News listeners in the region. And I just thought we'd have a breakfast meeting, nothing formal, just a time to get together and meet each other, talk. Give me a chance to answer some questions and just fellowship with you. So if you're in the region and you would like to meet with us over at a restaurant in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, please get in touch with me. You can email us at info@truenews.com, or you can call the office at 772-569-8880. And a number of you have already emailed us and said you definitely would be there. We need to hear from others just to know how big of a room, how many people we can expect. I'd love to meet you. Again, send us an email at info@truenews.com or call 772-569-8880.